The engines die on a party boat full of wealthy socialites, leaving it stranded in the middle of a Baltimore shipping channel. As the sounds of laughter and conversation spill from the boat, the police arrive to tow them back to shore. Unseen by the guests, the host quietly takes the policeman aside and pays him to leave them on the water. That he's willing to pay tells us this party must be lucrative for him, and it would be a shame to cut it short. Besides, the shipping channel they're stopped in is being used less and less frequently these days. Fewer ships. Fewer ships means they need fewer workers, which means younger workers can't find work. That decline leads to desperation, and there are those who can benefit from that desperation. Everybody wants something, which means everything is for sale. Welcome to Season 2, an examination of the death of work, the decline of the working class, and the human cost of greed. It all starts with something as trivial as a stained glass window. Known dickhead Stan Valchek brings a stained glass window to his priest and finds out that the dock workers beat him to it. And he's like, but how did they afford such a thing? And the priest is like,
you think I have time to ask a man why he giving me money?
The reason Frank comes under investigation isn't theft or human trafficking. It's just a policeman with a grudge.
You know what the trouble is, Brucey? We used to make shit in this country, build shit. Now we just put our hand in the next guy's pocket.
Frank Sobotka facilitates some absolutely awful shit. He sees 14 girls get murdered in a shipping container and still does business with the people who put them there. Yeah, he complains about what happened and he says it's over between them, but when they come back around with more money, he can't resist. And it would be easy for a character like that to be this force of pure evil. But he ends up feeling more like a guy just struggling to hold together something that maybe already fell apart. It's jarring how Season 2 shifts its focus almost completely away from the characters the show already established to introduce new characters who mostly have no role in the later seasons, but I think the point is to spend some time examining a culture that hasn't fully deteriorated yet. D'Angelo talks about how generations of his family all came up in the West Baltimore drug trade, but the Stevedores are a group still in the middle of their decline. Everybody reminisces about the years ago when the Stevedores had a thriving port to work in. That last generation wasn't angels, they stole stuff off the docks just like the current generation does, but as the port sees less and less business, a void opens up in the community, and people start filling it with other stuff. Nick and Ziggy can't get work on the docks, so they turn to stealing and drug dealing to get by. And Frank is caught in the middle, taking money from the most ruthless, soulless cutthroats and giving it to the shameless con artists to try and claw a path back to the glory days when the work was still there. Over the last year, while I've been trying to figure out what I wanted to say about Season 2, I watched The Sopranos for the first time, and it really helped frame the way I saw the story because both stories are about people trying to hold together institutions on the brink of collapse.
It's good to be in something from the ground floor. I came too late for that. I know. But lately, I'm getting the feeling that I came in at the end. The best is over.
The Sopranos is full of characters lamenting how modernity has degraded their business, how nobody has respect for the rules of the game anymore. But if you take any of these guys and scratch off even one layer of the mask they wear in public, you find that nobody was following the rules to begin with. Eating pussy is an affront against masculinity for some reason, but everybody does it. To insult a man's wife is an offense punishable by death, but all the men have gumars and a lot of them physically abuse their wives. Therapy represents the feminization of society, but when he needs to figure some shit out, even Paulie will go to therapy. The Stevedores face a similar hypocrisy. The old generation, full of stories about the glory days, gives rules to the younger generation that they don't follow, that they never followed. And that hypocrisy might be the root of the decline that Frank is fighting against. It manifests in different ways. Don't steal from the docks, Frank tells Nick, currently in the process of smuggling shit off the docks for the Greeks. Nobody gets special treatment, Frank tells Ziggy, handing a total stranger hundreds of dollars just to keep him in the union. Hypocrisy. It drives Nick towards crime and violence. For Ziggy, it's disillusionment, a cherry on top of a life already filled with ridicule and abuse.
What happened?
I don't know. I got tired. Got tired of being a punchline to every joke.
Ziggy's story is a descent into frustration and anger. At the start of the season, we see him the way everyone else in his life does. He's kind of a total moron. His first appearance is losing a shipping container and getting chewed out by his dad boss. But the more you see of him, the more you're reminded that while he may be a fuck-up, he's a fuck-up plagued by the same problems as everyone else on the docks. There's no work, at least not for the younger workers, so he turns to financing drug packages. But He's trying to play a game that, as season 1 showed us, requires a certain level of street cred, and his street credit score is like 310. The people in charge of selling his package can just not give him the money he's owed. What's this little fuck up gonna do about it? And when he tries to be intimidating, Cheese's crew rolls up and humiliates him in front of everyone. Okay, so drug dealing isn't gonna work. So he takes an opportunity to work with Nick to sell stolen cameras to the Greeks. And all of a sudden, we start to see what this kid could be. He rattles off info about these cameras like an expert. He researches how much these things sell for at retail and squeezes Gleekus to pay them a fair amount. And yeah, he can't help himself being an annoying little dickhead, but for once he's actually useful. But even at a high moment, he's reminded how unloved he is.
You know what, Dolores? I made money today.
Yeah? What ship was in?
Hey, Zig. Shot in the beard, Dolores? Frank Sabatka says I needed it. What's this?
Your change. Or so says Frank Sabatka. Pop's a good man, Zig.
His dad is handing out hundreds of dollars to randos just to keep them in the Union, but won't give Ziggy $1, much less show him an ounce of pride or affection.
Hey, Dad, when I was... Jesus, Pop, what was that for?
Say cheese. You pull another stunt like that, Zig, I'll have your damn card. I don't care who your mother is. Get the fuck out of here.
Watching The Sopranos this year helped me better articulate the real beauty of The Wire, the way it's structured. Every episode of this show is important. There are no throwaway episodes. Each one is another piece of all the stories it's juggling, and it fully embraces the idea that the story has to be viewed as the sum of its pieces rather than each piece standing alone. This might sound like all the most popular shows we watch today, but it's the end result of a long chain of TV evolution. For a long time, sitcoms and other episodic shows were the dominant form of TV structure because of how much easier it is to get people to tune in. You don't have to see every episode. You don't have to be paying attention to every detail. You can drop in and out each week and still enjoy the show. A serial show demands that you follow it from the beginning and in order, which makes it a lot more intimidating to a consumer, but the trade-off is you get to tell fantastically layered stories like this one. You capture viewers not through accessibility, but through emotional investment. Evolutionary biologists talk about transitional forms, the animals in between an ancestor and its descendant. The Sopranos was so interesting because it ends up feeling like the transitional form between the two modes of TV. The story builds on itself over the course of the show, and episodes refer back to earlier events, but there's still a feeling of episodicness there. Sometimes this lets the writers play with interesting scenarios without focusing an entire season around it, and use those one-off scenarios to explore new dimensions of these characters. What if Christopher and Paulie got stranded in the woods and we use that as an excuse to explore their relationship? What if Christopher dies for a second and goes to hell and we use that as an excuse to explore Paulie's fear of eternal damnation? What if Tony finds out his anxiety is actually centered on his childhood experiences with Gabagool? But then sometimes the show spends an episode on something that feels like it should be much more consequential. Tony and Adriana start developing feelings for each other and go out to find cocaine together at 3 in the morning, but then they get in a car crash and everyone thinks they are having an affair, and Tony has to threaten Christopher at gunpoint to forget about it, and then the next episode focuses mainly on Carmela having sex with AJ's English teacher. Both are very good episodes, but there's kind of an emotional disconnect after such an insane plot development with seemingly no fallout. The Wire does not have one-off episodes. Every episode is a chapter of the stories the season wants to focus on, and even in the slower episodes, there's an emotional progression towards the inevitable tragedy looming at the end of the story. That's not to say that one of these two structures is correct, it's just that I was better able to appreciate the way The Wire tells its story by seeing another very good show structured in a different way. But even though each episode feels like a chapter, every season has a chapter where the themes of the season are brought to the forefront. All Prologue, the 6th episode of season 2, deals with one of the most critical themes in this entire show. The idea that there are parts of our lives, our histories, that are inescapable. D'Angelo's analysis of The Great Gatsby kind of explicitly spells this out.
It's like you can change up, right? You can say you somebody new, you can give yourself a whole new story. But what came first is who you really are. And what happened before is what really happened.
There are no second acts in American life. Whatever you were first is what you always are. And it doesn't matter that you might want to be something different. You're not just formed by the world you came up in. Your past always finds ways to catch up with you. Dee spends the entire first half of this season trying to reject Avon and move on his own, because he sees prison as something that he deserves. It's the extension of the guilt he shows in season 1. He knows he's been complicit in a horrible system and feels like he needs to take a different approach to his life by coming to accept a new life in prison. And in this episode, it all comes to a head. The conversation between Dee and Brianna gives us a window into how he's thinking.
Ma, remember we used to live on Linden Avenue? Remember that house? I was about 6, 7 years old. I was playing on the porch. Them twins came by, started picking on me, messing with me. Remember that? I'm banging on the door, trying to get inside, and you standing right there to open the door. Except you ain't letting me inside. You told me to go back out there and fight him, whether I lose or not. Remember? They beat the shit out of you. Yeah. Then you say to me, boy, I might have brung you into this world, but you the one who gonna have to live in it.
This story underscores how cruel and thoughtless D'Angelo's upbringing was, but it somehow rings true. Despite the fact that D'Angelo was brought into the world submerged in a system full of death and cruelty, used by a mother who wanted him to provide her a life of material comfort, he still has to choose how he wants to live his life, and he chooses to reject that system. He can lean on the corrupt prison system to scrape years off of his time like Avon, but he chooses to accept the consequences of his past life, and he's killed because his rejection of that system serves as a potential danger to his family. It is legitimately heartbreaking to watch this dude finally feel like he's gonna start his second act, and then get snuffed out for no reason. D'Angelo isn't the only one in this season whose story examines second acts. McNulty can say that he's done being a murder police and that he's done drinking and sleeping around, but that's who he was first. He doesn't get a second act either, and no matter how much he tells everyone that he's different, he isn't. He tries to patch up his relationship with his ex-wife, but she doesn't trust him anymore. Who he was first means he'll always be on the outside of the tent, yearning for a life he already threw away. At the start of the season, Kima is committed to becoming a lawyer after being hospitalized in season 1, preparing for a new life as a parent with Cheryl. But it's immediately clear that she's looking for the first opportunity to go back to what she was before, that maybe she doesn't even want to be a parent. Daniels tries to quit the police department but gets lured back in, convincing himself he'll transform into a shrewd political gamesman. But it takes about one conversation with Lester for him to realize that's not who he is. Despite what Marla wants him to be, despite the fact that it might destroy their marriage, he is who he is.
I love the job, Marla. I can't help it.
The job doesn't love you.
You know what I love? The mind that's always a step ahead of me. The person who never stops thinking it through. That's what I fell in love with first.
You know what I fell in love with first? Do you? Your ambition.
And watching this season this last time, I realized that Ziggy is the linchpin of this idea. A kid with so much legitimate potential and drive and cleverness who is stuck in an entire world that he doesn't belong in. Ziggy can rattle off all these stories from back in the day on the docks because he spent his whole life submerged in these stories, in this culture. But no matter how familiar it is to him, he'll never belong to it. Just like D'Angelo in season 1, he's failed by his role models. His father, the person who should have been able to help guide him towards a life of actual fulfillment, can't even talk to the kid. Frank is so busy trying to keep the Union alive so the docks will be around for the next generation that he doesn't even realize he's completely neglecting the one person in that generation who needs his help and guidance the most. Ziggy's situation only gets worse. Nick comes strolling along and gets into the drug game, and unlike Ziggy, he's wildly successful. The Greeks like him immediately. He's making money hand over fist, and he starts paying Ziggy to do nothing, keeping him as far away from the Greeks as possible. Ziggy is literally worth more not involved in the business. It's another level of humiliation. So Ziggy says, no, fuck your pity money, I'm gonna do it my own way. He plans an entire heist to steal luxury cars off the docks and sell them to Gleekus. He does a bunch of research to figure out what they're worth, comes up with a way to fake an outside job so nobody blames the Union, and manages to pull off the entire thing without a hitch. He shows up at Gleekus' warehouse, having earned his payday, and Gleekus pays him half. Even when he manages to do everything right, he still gets fucked over, because he doesn't get a second act. He's Ziggy forever. Gleekus can just screw him over. What's this little fuck up gonna do about it? I've seen the season several times, and the one piece that never clicked for me was the duck. It's such a random subplot that always felt so inconsequential, but watching it this time, I think I get it. I think the duck, in a weird metaphorical way, is Ziggy. You watch this guy try over and over again to fit into a world he doesn't belong in, and the burning question is, why doesn't he just do something else? And then Ziggy sees this duck.
How come they don't fly away?
It can't, its wings were clipped. So Ziggy buys the duck, and because it's Ziggy, he takes it to the bar. And all the stevedores have a good laugh watching this duck gulp down whiskey like it's water. Nobody in this room is thinking about what's good for the duck. As long as it's entertaining, they don't give a shit. These same guys take any opportunity to ridicule and belittle Ziggy, tricking him into thinking he got a girl pregnant, goading him into starting a fight with a guy who they know will kick his ass. And what happens when the duck's only value is how amusing it is to watch? It dies. In a weird way, killing Gleekus is what set Ziggy apart from his cousin and his dad. Because unlike Frank or Nick, when Ziggy does something truly irredeemable, he owns it. He confesses and faces the consequences. In his last conversation with his dad, Ziggy accepts what he is.
Pop. When I seen what I did to that kid down at the store, it made me sick in my stomach.
That ain't you, Zig.
It ain't. 'Cause the same blood don't flow for us, Pop. I mean, I wish it did, but it don't.
You're more like me than you know. You're Sabaka.
Fucked is what I am. What can I say?
And Frank has to watch as the kid that he forgot to love slips through the cracks and disappears. For Frank, I think the turning point comes in a conversation with his brother Louis, Nick's father. He tells Frank the police just tossed his house and found Nick's heroin and cash in the basement, and Frank is like, heroin? Nah, that can't be right. They were just stealing like cameras and stuff.
You knew? And once Nicky got used to boosting stuff and seeing a little money, what did you think he was gonna do? Turn straight all of a sudden and give it up? Nah, Frank. Once you gave him a taste on a house, just...
Frank's last conversation with DiBiago is what ties it all together. This whole time, he's been seeing himself as part of the solution, working around the clock to save the waterfront for the next generation. But in reality, he's just embraced the problem. That back-in-the-day mentality comes back one last time. The last generations used to work for a living, but now everyone, his whole culture, his nephew, his kid, even himself, gets by stealing from other people. He rails against the decline of the waterfront, but he also embodies that decline. But the real tragedy of Frank's story is that by making himself the focal point of the effort to revitalize the docks, by putting the whole cause on his back, he takes it all down with him when he goes. Once word gets out he's dirty, all the progress he made schmoozing politicians is just undone. All the money, all the compromises he made, all the time away from his family, focused on making a better future for them, is just erased. Frank knows he has to come clean. He comes in to talk to the detail and promises to come back the next morning with an attorney and give them all the information he has. But the Greeks have one more piece of bait. They can get Ziggy out of his charges. They can have the key witness change his story on the stand. Frank can cheat the system one last time and save the son he failed in so many ways. He takes the bait. The tragic thing is, this plan was never going to work because Ziggy isn't Frank. Ziggy signed a confession, so it wouldn't have mattered if the witness changed his story. Ziggy knew what he needed to do. The one who couldn't seem to find his place in the tough, bravado-driven world of the docks is the only one with the courage to accept responsibility. More than any other season, Season 2 is focused on setting up what comes next. Stringer's brief time as the head of the Barksdale organization plants all these seeds for the unraveling that's about to happen in his relationship with Avon. The Barksdales are reeling from the events of Season 1. Their king is locked up, their suppliers think they can't be trusted, all their muscle is either dead or in prison, and they try to go about business as usual. They buy off-brand shit from Atlanta and try to maintain their territory, but word is starting to spread. They're weak, and they're selling shit that isn't as good as their competitors. Stringer, the businessman, sees a way to work with Proposition Joe to exchange territory for product. But Avon, the soldier, can't stand to give up territory they fought so hard for. He calls in Brother Mouzone, the legendary New York hitman, to defend their territory. So Stringer has to find another way. He recruits Omar, telling him that Mouzone was the one who tortured Brandon. But he's trying to scam the two smartest killers in Baltimore. They're gonna figure it out. and there will be consequences. In the wake of the failed hit on Muzone, Stringer and Avon have a conversation that frames the story that's about to be told.
Now, if the word get out on the street that we weak like this, how the fuck we supposed to maintain our shit?
I know, but we gotta hit right back, make a statement, but Muzone not saying who did that shit.
You asked him who it was?
Yeah, I asked him.
Why?
Why what?
How you gonna ask a soldier like Muzone a question like that? Either he gonna say or he gonna go and work it out. Either way, you ain't got to be asking him shit.
Man, every market-based business runs in cycles, and we're going through a down cycle right now.
String, this ain't about your motherfucking business class either. It ain't that part of it. It's that other thing.
Stringer wants to change the rules of the game, to play the drug game like a businessman, but Avon has to remind him, the nature of their game means a strategy like that misses half the picture.
The street is the street, always.
The first season established that all these games have rules. These rules seem to be as old as the institutions themselves, rigorously enforced even when not written down, and above all, eternal. This season starts to hint at something broader. Omar Little sits in the side room of a courthouse talking about his fascination with Greek myths. Mars, Ares.
Same dude, different name is all.
Not just eternal rules, eternal characters, eternal people. Cycles of individuals walking in the footsteps left behind by the people who came before them, playing the same games. Where the show wants to go next is, why can't the games change? Why do the rules stay the same? And what happens to the individuals who try to break them?
Fuck it. Chew you up, they gotta spit you back out.